If I truly wanted connection, time wouldn't have stretched into silence. Silence doesn't happen by mistake, it happens by choice, especially when it lasts for months. People who are unsure don't disappear, they linger. They send casual check-ins, react to stories, test the emotional temperature. Uncertainty reaches out because it needs reassurance. I didn't do that, not because I couldn't, but because I didn't want to reopen something I had already closed within myself. When a woman is healing, she usually circles back. Healing looks like reflection followed by re-engagement. It asks questions, it seeks clarity, but there's a point beyond healing, a point where returning would cost too much. That's where I was. My absence wasn't confusion, it was protection. I wasn't trying to punish you or make a statement. I was preserving the version of myself I had worked hard to build without you in it. Months of no contact mean I didn't just need space, I chose distance. Space is temporary. Distance is intentional. Space says, I'll be back when I feel better. Distance says, I've already moved forward. Returning would have required me to step back into emotional roles I had outgrown. And growth, once stabilized, doesn't negotiate with the past. This wasn't about pride. It was about alignment. I noticed that every time I imagined reaching out, my body felt tense, not relieved. That told me everything. Peace doesn't feel like hesitation. If connection were still right, it wouldn't feel disruptive. It would feel natural. Silence is often misunderstood as indifference, but that's too simple. Sometimes silence is the clearest form of self-respect. I didn't disappear to be chased. I disappeared because I no longer needed to be found, and when absence lasts this long, it stops being a phase, it becomes a direction. At first, no contact is about emotional regulation. It's about calming the nervous system, breaking reactive cycles, and creating enough space to think clearly. In the beginning, silence feels intentional and effortful. You count the days, you resist impulses. You remind yourself why you started, but something shifts when time passes without disruption. After months, no contact stops being a strategy and starts becoming an identity shift. I didn't just stop talking to you, I stopped orienting my life around your reactions. I stopped wondering how my choices would land with you. I stopped adjusting my tone, my timing, my emotions for your comfort. That's not distance, that's rewiring. I built routines that didn't include your presence. My mornings didn't begin with checking for messages. My evenings didn't end with unresolved emotional weight. I learned how calm feels when it's uninterrupted. And once silence becomes normal, noise feels intrusive. Reopening the door doesn't feel romantic, it feels risky. The truth is, I didn't lose you. I outgrew the version of myself that needed your validation. When you stop needing someone to witness your healing, you realize how much energy was once spent being seen instead of being whole. I no longer needed reactions to confirm my worth. I no longer needed presence to feel chosen. That's why returning feels unnecessary. Not because nothing mattered, but because everything already did. I integrated the lessons without reopening the wounds. Identity shifts don't announce themselves, they settle quietly, and once settled, they don't negotiate backward. People assume silence means something is unfinished. But sometimes silence means something has finally resolved internally. I didn't move on dramatically. I moved on structurally. My life no longer had emotional space carved out for you. And when that happens, reconnecting isn't about desire, it's about disruption. Reaching out would mean revisiting patterns I worked hard to escape. And that's the part people don't understand. Missing someone doesn't automatically mean they're good for you. Memory is selective. It keeps the warmth and edits out the erosion, but growth remembers the cost. Even if I miss you, I don't miss who I was with you. I don't miss second guessing myself. I don't miss emotional negotiations or feeling responsible for someone else's stability. I don't miss shrinking to keep things smooth. Those versions of me are buried for a reason. Months of distance mean I've already grieved quietly. Grief doesn't always look like tears or dramatic goodbyes. Sometimes it looks like acceptance. I mourned the future I once imagined and released it without needing closure from you. That's why contact now wouldn't be curiosity, it would be regression. Curiosity moves forward. Regression pulls you back into old dynamics with new awareness but the same emotional gravity. And awareness doesn't protect you from repetition, boundaries do. Reaching out would blur boundaries I finally made solid. Healing taught me discernment. It taught me that familiarity is not compatibility. Just because something once felt intense doesn't mean it was healthy. And just because silence feels empty doesn't mean it needs to be filled with the past. I didn't walk away because I stopped caring. I walked away because I started caring about myself in a way that required consistency, not emotional spikes. I chose peace over pattern, and once you choose that, you don't reopen doors just to prove strength. You keep them closed to maintain it. Waiting doesn't make you loyal, it keeps you stuck. Loyalty without consent turns into self-abandonment. If I wanted you to hold space, I would have said so. I'm not subtle when I want connection. My silence isn't confusion. It's communication. My absence is the message. Not everything needs to be explained when it's already being shown. I didn't ask you to wait. I didn't promise a return. I stepped away and stayed away because that was the most honest thing I could do. Letting me go isn't losing me. It's choosing yourself the same way I chose myself first. Holding on to someone who has clearly moved forward doesn't make you devoted. It keeps you anchored to a version of reality that no longer exists. People romanticize waiting, but growth doesn't reward stagnation. I didn't disappear to test your patience. I disappeared to reclaim my agency, and the most respectful response to that isn't persistence, it's acceptance. Closure isn't always mutual. Sometimes closure is recognizing that silence is final, not temporary, that no response is still a response, and that dignity comes from responding to reality, not hope. If you truly care about me, let me remain who I've become without trying to pull me back into who I was. And if you truly care about yourself, stop waiting for someone who already chose a different direction. Letting go isn't giving up, it's aligning with truth.